today we'll take a look at the Inquisitor build for Shadow of the Erdtree. I wanted to go with a Holy Paladin build, but it seems that Inquisitor is a much better option. We're getting a number of weapons in the DLC that have an amazing faith scaling, which also benefits physical damage, as well as a number of spells such as the Giant Golden Arc, which get unleashed very fast, deal very good damage, and if you can believe that, they can also actually stun enemies. Now, the two main weapons we're going to be using with this build are the Anvil Hammer as well as the Barbed Staff Spear, both actually fitting a predominantly faith build very well. Specifically, the Anvil Hammer is one of the highest damage dealers in the new DLC, specifically because of the way faith scales this weapon's damage. It's not just the fire that gets an increase, but also physical damage that gets bumped as you invest more points into faith, making it very similar in terms of damage scaling like the Smith Script weapons. On top of that, it also comes with a very strong Ash of War called the Smithing Art Spears. This is basically Eruption 2.0. You smash the anvil into the ground and then lift it up, dealing massive damage but also causing spears to appear from the ground. In fact, those spears linger for a split second afterwards, and it seems that as long as enemies stay in the range, they will get hit twice by the spears, once they appear and second time before they disappear. But this also does some insane stance damage, so it takes about 3 or so hits on most regular bosses to actually fully stun them. It's also really great at blocking physical damage. It has 80 physical negation, so you can actually use this as a shield, do riposte, and you're basically going to take down enemies very easily. The other one is the Barbed Staff Spear, which is a very interesting option because this also has a number of holy attacks via its special skill called Jory's Inquisition. Basically, this doesn't just unleash holy damage, but that holy damage can also further cause blood loss buildup, on top of the fact that it also seems to be rather decent at eventually breaking the enemy's stance. This is something that you can easily spam. It doesn't have the best tracking of them all, but since they travel fast, all of these projectiles more often than not tend to hit targets if you position yourself properly. Our third and final damage component is going to be the Giant Golden Arc. It's one of my favorite new incantations in the DLC. It's a very good holy damage spam attack that unleashes covering a very wide horizontal area. So it travels through obstacles, it also hits targets no matter what, and its travel distance is also really good at an FP cost that's not too prohibitive. In terms of seals, obviously Claw Mark, since we're using Strength and Faith, this is going to give you probably the best bang for your buck. It's going to give you a very good incantation scaling and some nice damage, but you're not going to get any specific boosts to the Golden Arc from this. You can, of course, also pick the Rakshasa armor. This is going to just buff our damage a bit more. And I also went with that Horned Warrior helmet so that I can save a few strength points and maybe go into something else. Again, faith is our most important stat, so you might save like 5 points and put it in that as well. In terms of the talismans, we're going with the Phlox Canvas. Obviously, since we're using incantations, we need to boost the damage on that. Also with the Sacred Scorpion Charm to further boost our holy damage. It works really great for the Golden Arc. I'm also using Godfrey Icon. Since this is a charged spell, it does benefit from it. So you're going to basically unleash higher damage. And since we wanted to shorten that cast, we're using the beloved Stardust from the new DLC. This does debuff our defenses a little bit, but that increase in cast speed is really great. If, however, you're going to focus most of your damage from the anvil, then obviously you're going to want that Shard of Alexander and the two-handed talisman so that you can boost the damage on it as much as possible. In terms of the stats that I have, this is the stat distribution. Now, we kind of have to make a few compromises because of the very odd attribute requirements of some of these weapons. So I'm going with 60 Vigor as usual, 29 into Mind so that we can spam abilities. We do need about 33 Endurance with this setup because that anvil is actually really heavy. So if you're also going with the Rakshasa set, you're going to definitely need that. Besides that, I'm also going with the minimum of 39 strength points and 18 dexterity that we need basically to equip the anvil as well as that barbed spear. You can also sacrifice not using one of them and maybe save on like 5 points so that you can boost your primary damage attribute, which is going to be Faith. You would try to boost that as much as possible, preferably 70 plus, so that you increase the damage both on that anvil, which as I've said gets the physical damage bonus, but also on the Golden Arc or any other faith/holy damage skill that you might be using in the DLC. Besides this, it's also going to give us access to Golden Vow, Flame Grammy Strength, also any other, of course, faith-based ability. And you're also going to want to use maybe a physics potion that further boosts your faith, and also make use of the Holy Cracked Tier so that you can further buff your holy damage. And the thing about holy damage in the new DLC is that a lot of enemies seem to be very weak to it. Pretty much through and through, I don't think there's any boss in the DLC that's specifically high resistant to holy damage compared to the base version of the game. And in fact, I've noticed that even though Golden Arc might not be the highest damage in the base version of the game, against many of the mobs in the DLC, it gets a huge boost. Pretty much like twice, even 3 times in terms of damage numbers. Now, in terms of overall strategy, well, let's go over the anvil. In this case, you're going to have to be careful about chain spamming its weapon skills, specifically because it seems to be very easily chained if you just mash that attack button. It's the only one I've noticed behaving this way, and if you just press that L2 too many times, you're going to get locked in like 3 or 4 consecutive weapon skills, which are pretty lengthy. They do give you a ton of hyper armor, which means it's very hard to get interrupted out of these animations, but at the same time, this means you're going to be doing, or well, trading blows with the boss. So if you don't have enough resistances, you might end up simply dying. But if you do find the positioning and openings, you're going to absolutely wreck the enemy's HP bar. As I've said, a single skill unleash is basically 3 sources of damage. You do the initial smash, then the lift up, and of course, finally the spears, which actually hit the target 2 times. So that might be up to 4 hits in one single skill. So by the 3rd skill unleash, that's almost a guarantee stagger for like 99% of the bosses in the new DLC. Plus, almost like more than half of their HP completely gone. On the other hand, for the spear, I really like using this against trash mobs. Actually, both of them are great against trash mobs, but this can be used with a shield in one hand and the spear in the other, and go with a riposte gameplay. I found that this usually stuns enemies in one single riposte, and from this point on, this is the moment I like using its weapon skill to unleash all of those golden arcs against the target. It's guarantee hit, it's going to even hit targets in the head at that angle, so you do get some bonus damage. Plus, if they have large enough HP values, you can even cause bleed buildup. It happens usually towards the end of their HP bars, but it can still trigger on larger HP enemies. I really like this one. You can also spam it from afar, but like I said, my preferred route is to first stun the target and then use that with the Ash of War. Finally, the Golden Arc is what you can use to initiate. Usually, I start with the Golden Arc and basically just unleash like 5, 6, 7 consecutive waves, depending if I have the room or not. This seems to let me deal enough damage to pull off like 5, at least 10,000 damage because of how good the arcs are. Every single arc, when fully buffed with this build, deal over 2,000 damage. So as you can imagine, 5 hits within like a span of a 2 second, you're going to absolutely shred that enemy. So going over how you can find these items, you can get that anvil at the Ruined Forge lava intake very early in the game. Basically, just activate the lever in the room with the big pipe, make it go down, and then use it to go all the way at the top of it to the right, and inside of this room, you're going to find that really awesome weapon. In the case of the Golden Arc incantation, you can simply head over to the ruins of Unte, very close to the castle watering hole side of Grace. Now you can totally power up the giant furnace enemy so that you can clear the entrance, but if you don't want to do that or don't have the pots, you can just go all the way to the back of the castle. Here you will see that there's almost like a broken wall, and what you can do is to jump over these very small rails by the edge of the wall to your left side. So jump onto the second one and then angle it in such a way so that you can actually jump over the wall all the way into the backyard. And from here, just enter the chapel, open the chest, and you pretty much got your incantation. For the spear, you will need to finish the Darklight Catacombs, and as you make your way out of it towards the Abyssal Woods, you're going to have to fight Jory, one of the most annoying bosses in the DLC. So he's going to spam a ton of spells, which is why, yeah, it's going to be quite difficult unless you bring some sleeping pots with you to more easily take it down. Anyway, that's about it with the video. Let me know down below if you're using any variation of this. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.